Welcome, everyone, listening to this podcast or watching this podcast. I'm your host, Arun. Each week, in collaboration with Narcis, the founder of Last Week in Denmark, we bring you the latest news and insights that matter most to the expat community here in Denmark. Welcome, Narcis, to the show once again.
Thank you, Arun, and hopefully we will be able to do this more often. From what I hear around, people are quite excited that the podcast is back. I'm surprised how many people want to see and to listen, and not just read Last Week in Denmark. So I'm happy that we're doing this again, and yeah, let's have fun again tonight. How are you, Arun, this week? I'm really curious about your life. What makes your life in Denmark interesting this last week?
I'm personally, I'm personally happy with how the week unfolded because there are two things that I'm really excited that I want to share. Number one, after a long preparation of 1 month, I finally passed my driving lessons, both
Wow,
theory and practicals. So now
congratulations!
I would say, I will hold a Danish license. So I'm excited, happy. Uh,
Well, the first
it's a
question
big
is,
deal for me.
what's about the car? What's gonna be your first car in Denmark?
No, I don't think so. I'm going to invest money in my car because it's damn expensive to buy a car, number one. But I don't think I need a car at the moment because I am single, living life as frugal as possible. So the
Like
first thing that I would rather invest is in
headlights.
housing,
I am
but
single.
that's another topic. But they also have a lot of other options, right? Renting, owning a car is not a thing for me. But
No.
of course, at some point, I might think about it, consider about it if I have a family. But at the moment, it's more like, yeah, traveling, having a road trip abroad would essentially be the first step.
Well, Arun, it's amazing you got your driving license. Congratulations on that. But you have seen that they are planning to change the rules about driving. Like for example, you'll not be able to drive anymore if you had one or two beers. That's not an option anymore
Oh
because
yeah,
they lower it from 0.5 to 0.2. It's not yet.
exactly.
It's not yet a decision. It's a
Mm,
proposal that needs to pass this autumn in the parliament, and maybe
mm,
it'll be enforced from January next year. But it's not yet a law. It's a proposal. It's a proposal that we need to be serious about because it's
mm,
proposed by the government, which has a majority in the parliament. So usually, what they propose kind of becomes reality.
mm,
So unless there will be some sort of very huge backlash against it, there goes the 0.5 to 0.2. But there is a, let's just say, it's Denmark, and every legislation has, let's just say, a way out. And the way out here is that you have to wait 3 years. Basically, only your first 3 years of having a driving license is this special lower alcohol limit. It's not for everyone.
So how does it work? So if I own a license now, so this law applies for the new license holders,
Yeah.
or okay. So it will affect you and me. So once you get your license, you will also be under the same rules,
Yeah.
I guess.
It
Mm.
seems no more wine, no more beer.
Don't drink and drive. I think that's the say, right? I mean, when you remind me of this news article that you're pointing out to from point five to point two,
Yeah.
I think this rule is already sort of similar to what Faroe Islands has in place already. Because when I went through the theory exam, I think Denmark Denmark's alcohol limit level is I think zero point 0.5, but in Faroe I think it's 0.25 or something. But it seems to be a good move, in my opinion, because then people are really stringent about these levels, alcohol levels, and they will not be able to mess with the system that is in place, which I think is really essential. Especially country like Denmark, I think the culture of consuming alcohol is pretty normal and pretty, pretty. Yeah, that's an everyday thing, right? Every weekend, partying and consuming alcohol. But
Well, in
in
my
my
opinion,
opinion, it's a good rule.
it might be a problem for some of the internationals or non-Europeans who are trying to apply for citizenship, right? Because if not just non-Europeans, everyone wants to
Yeah,
apply for citizenship,
yeah.
and if you get the like
Clip.
if you yeah a clip or something, then you
Mm.
have to wait 4 years extra before you can apply for
That
citizenship.
is true as well.
So
You're right.
basically, now it will become even easier to get that clip.
I think that's a fair point to argue, and that is
So
right. It's not just the clip; it's also a fine of 3,000 kronas, right?
yeah,
Something
but
around
if
thousand.
you're caught with 0.2,
Mm.
that's already that's gonna be bigger than 3,000 the fine. I'm
Oh,
pretty
okay.
sure the rules. You just passed the theory rules, right? So what are the rules
Yeah,
about driving with over 0.5? What happens then to you?
yeah. I think they get a fine, but they also get a clip, which means that that's kind of a big impact in their I would say citizenship, obviously. But
Hmm.
if the level goes beyond, I think 1 or 1.2, then they face imprisonment. That's the worst thing that could happen, right? And
Yeah.
that's the worst, and nobody wants to be in that position. But
No.
and one of the reasons why I don't want to own a car is also like the clip could be of different reasons, not just in alcohol, but also bypassing laws or not following rules, lane change or parking issues or something. And I think these will also count as some sort of a penalty or a fine. And that is also one of the reasons why I don't want to take in that burden. So I would rather wait for a couple of years before I invest in a car, owning a car.
By the time you're gonna get the car around, they're gonna be driving themselves. So
Driverless cars, yeah. But that is
I
that is
mean,
something
that's
I'm just
definitely
I'm just wondering how then they will go with proceed with training, because if the cars can park automatically, then I don't think it will be a skill that is required anymore. Because one of my friend told me, I don't park my car. I know that my car will automatically park. And I said, then if cars are becoming that intelligent, then how do we then get a driving license without able to park? Now you can actually get licenses, like you mentioned, I think last week, that you can actually get a license without a gearless vehicle. So you can use an automatic geared
hmm
car to get the same license as you would do normally for a gear car. So things might change, like you said, with some
things change all the time, and I
relaxations with
think
rules. Yeah.
the fewer there is fewer people compared to the past if you look at the percentage of the population that want to take a license anyway. So there's
Mm,
fewer people who want to own a car or who want to have a license. Usually they are waiting till later in life because
mm,
while they live in student life, they live in the city center. Why they even
mm,
have to think about it? So maybe they will consider if they when they get married and have children and
mm,
move in the suburbs, then it's like, oh God, the public transport does not work so well. And that
mm,
takes me to the next subject for today about the rural areas. There's a rural reform coming up
mm,
because they would like that more people actually choose to stay in the rural areas. There is a severe depopulation going on in the rural areas. Uh,
okay.
in some areas, they expect in the next 10 years that there will be a depopulation of minus 30%,
Okay.
minus 40%. And that's, to be honest, the only reason those numbers are not worse are because of
Mm,
us. A lot of internationals choose to live in the rural areas,
okay.
choose to stay in there, and because of the cheaper housing, because they don't
Mm,
mind driving further or
mm,
commuting to work a longer distance. And that
mm,
means we are actually now keeping many of these villages alive. There's actually, if you do a search in newspapers around
mm,
local newspapers around Denmark, you'll find so many stories of families, international
mm,
families, who are being praised for choosing the village of whatever Boris that has 500 citizens in total, and thanks to that family with 5 children, now they have a future because there's 5 children for now in the village.
that
So, you know.
when you mention rural areas, so they fall under, let's say, I live in Sjælland. I'm not in
Mhm.
the city, of course. I'm not in Greater Copenhagen. I live in Gentofte. Does it count as a rural area, or is it?
Really.
No, okay. But I
It's
think in between, let's say, Roskilde and then Gentofte. There's a lot of
It, it,
areas.
there's also in your area, rural areas.
Mm.
It just has to be very few people living there. I think
Oh, okay.
rural is already under 2,000 people in the village.
Okay, then that definitely Gentofte is not that.
No, no, it's
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
And
yeah.
Kintoft is one of the more, let's say, richer areas of the country.
Mm, there is populated as well. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is quite populated.
So
And
I
then,
would expect that to be considered rural. Rural areas are basically sparsely populated by large municipalities who have a lot of
mm,
small villages, not a huge agglomeration, let's just say in the center,
mm,
uh, and they don't have a lot of, let's say, industry or a lot of business going on
mm,
to support them, because you know how it works in Denmark.
mm,
Most of your taxes stay in your municipality.
mm,
So if a municipality has what 20,000 people or 50,000 people,
mm,
mm, and most of them work. I don't know if I work in Aarhus,
mm,
and luckily I can pay my dues in Aalborg because
mm,
my address is in Aalborg, right?
mm, mm,
But if I work in Aalborg, if then I need to have a chance to work. But then if you
mm,
look at these rural areas like Lowland, right?
mm,
Look at Lowland. Lowland has a huge unemployment problem, right?
mm,
This huge, huge in Danish standards, okay?
mm,
Because
mm,
our national unemployment rate is 2.4,
mm,
and Lowland has a bit over 6, which in context of Europe is perfectly fine. It's just if you
mm,
compare Lowland with the rest of the country, you will notice a lot of problems there. Like,
mm,
for example, 8% of the population in Lowland is registered as a bad debtor, right? On
mm,
the RKI, in Denmark, if you don't pay your debts,
mm,
then they put you in this special RKI register,
mm.
uh, to know, so others know that you are a bad pay. So they
Okay.
shouldn't borrow your money.
Mm,
So if you are on this register, so 8% of the population in Lowland is on that register. Then also it was, I remember Lowland appeared again in the top when it was about how many people fail at math and Danish after
okay.
finishing their education, and it was a severe number of 30% in Lowland.
Mm,
So as you can see, the situation down there is not great, right? The rural areas are not having, let's just say, the same level of attention and investments from the government or in general from society compared to like big cities, right?
mm,
Or Gentofte.
mm. I think it's also like what you mentioned is the level of education is not also the same as I understand from you,
Well,
because passing a math is as a fundamental thing, but it's also like in India, if I compare some of the things that I compare with India, and I feel like institutions in India are privatized because a lot of people wanted to get good education so they could good jobs and
mhm,
so on and so forth. And when I start to compare and I tell my parents, it says education in Denmark is free, but you also get good education. But from things that I learned from Denmark, local articles and stuff, I think it's not like the same everywhere in all the communes.
unfortunately,
And
no. That's
that's
the
also an
problem,
information.
and I think that's why right now, for example, one of the lead journalists in Denmark
Mm,
from Berlinske, she went on TV and said, "We live in a brutal class society in Denmark. The
mm,
whole dream of egalitarian society is just not real." Uh, and to be honest, if you look at the statistics, the level of inequality in Denmark is growing.
okay.
Um, Unfortunately, because what is the Danish dream? The Danish dream basically says we should be able to work whatever, but kind of live similar lives.
Mm,
So no matter that you have whatever, I don't know, you're a doctor and I'm a cleaner on the street, we should not have too much difference in our income level. There
mm,
shouldn't be our children, if they go to public education, they should have the same level of education and opportunities in life.
mm,
If I go to the doctor, I should be able to reach the same treatment, right? Regardless if I'm a cleaner or you're a doctor, right?
mm,
Um, Unfortunately, that statistics are showing that people who earn less money live less, live
mm,
fewer years in Denmark. So you can say that people who earn well they're also a burden on society because they tend to live really, really long.
mm.
So they
But
tend to take
how,
pension for a long time.
I mean, a lot of people who earn, sometimes I feel like they're not, I would say it's not, I cannot compare the data with healthiness because all these rich kids, for example, I don't think they have a healthy lifestyle, for example. And of course, it could compare and say, okay, I have a good financial uh, muscle that I could use, but but they're also fat, uh, unhealthy, rich people. Uh, I cannot just say that it is connected to the healthiness, but one is true, like you mentioned, they don't have the same salary, like based on professions, and it is starting to change.
I'm
But
not
it used to
saying
be
the exact same. I'm
mm,
saying similar.
similar.
There will always be differences, right? But there shouldn't
Mm,
be. The idea is that regardless of how big the difference in salaries is between us, both of
mm,
us can afford to take vacation. Both of
mm,
us can, our children can go to the same school. We go to the
mm,
same doctor. We go to the same store. We
mm,
go in society together and play football.
mm,
Uh, Denmark is unfortunately very influenced by the US society. And the way US
mm,
goes, we are kind of following. No wonder that Denmark and US are a bit like umbilically connected. And because there's this huge, um, I think they saw they the idea of being more about yourself and less about the community comes from there, to be honest. Not,
mm,
no offense to all our US listeners and Americans who live in Denmark, but it's about culture, right? It's and where do you get influenced by? And I'm not saying the whole America is like that, but certain pictures from US,
mm,
from certain parts of US emerge here, and they influence the way people think and the way people regard the Danish society. And I think that's not great for us because
mm,
the way Denmark was built, and we were able to be a top without having any resources, right? Because we don't have petrol like the Norwegians have.
natural
Uh,
resources.
we don't have wood and IKEA like Sweden has.
Mm,
We have innovation
mm,
and we have community. Those two things that we have in Denmark kept us very high. The fact
mm,
that we were able to sell innovation to other countries, be that in green transition, be that in pharma right
mm,
now. I mean, look
mm,
around. We're the only Nordic state that is doing well economically. Everyone
mm,
else is suffering around us.
mm. That is
Uh,
true. I think both energy and pharmaceuticals are driving the society in a positive direction. I think one thing is very clear. A lot of people are, of course, influenced by the Western countries, influenced by a lot of US markets. And you talked about the young people, right? Which brings to one of the information, one of the article about young people between the age 25 to 29 years old own a house. There's very few, seldom 27% or so. So let us walk through that article.
yeah.
What is special about it? A 27 percentage. Do you think normally people at that age own a house? Because I haven't in my lifetime, in my 25 years, when I was 25 years old, I was living with my parents in India, and it's not a big deal to actually own a house. Of course, I have a hereditary property in India that I enjoy being with my family. But how does it work in Denmark? What's the dynamics here?
No, but you know how in Denmark parents expect young people to leave the nest at 18. At 18, it rings the bell. Ta-na-na.
Okay.
Time for us to pack our bags and go to Thailand. Dear child, have a good life.
Okay. So 18, they send their
You
kids out of the home.
exactly. You'll just put this song "Combardo, Combardo," and then you and then you'll help them pack their packages and have a good life. We tried our best. We did what we could. Now is
Mm,
your turn. So yes, if you look at the statistics from 1980s, right,
mm,
60% of 25-year-olds had a house, owned a house.
okay.
60%, and if you look at 30-year-olds, it was 80%.
Mm,
Uh, so it was very seldom. It was very rare that young people will not own a house. And look at today, 25, 27%, which is
very
I
low
feel
compared to that
worse.
data.
I really
Mm.
fear that it was a lot worse. To be honest,
Mm.
I expected 5-6%. Uh,
I have a question here,
yeah,
just out of curiosity. So I know these people, young Danish kids, they go out and work in supermarkets, work to earn their daily wages at a very young age, which I really feel inspired, which I also share to my community in India. But how much they could earn in a span of, let's say, while studying they get SUs to finance themselves, so they actually earn a very small portion that could be you can save them. But do you think that they could save, like, let's say 200 or 300 thousand kroners to put as a down payment for buying an apartment? Must be a lot of money, right?
well, it's the down payment is 5%. So
Yeah.
usually, would you
Oh.
not go as your first house? Because the idea is in Denmark, you get probably to own more than one house in your lifetime.
Mm.
So 5% as a first house, you're not going to buy a big house. You're most likely going to
Mm.
buy something that costs maybe 1 million.
Mm.
So 5% will be 50,000, and 50,000 is possible to put on a side in
Mm.
the span from 18 to 25. It's 7 years. You
Where do
most
you
definitely.
get housing for 1 million? I would like to also pitch in because
Arun, but
it's
you
very
don't stay
expensive,
in
to
an
be
off
honest.
day. You know,
I
that's
live in a
the
place where
problem.
I can't imagine to buy a house.
Yeah, exactly. They have to leave Ghent off day. That's just not for you.
I'm thinking of actually doing that. I just saw the prices in the current year. The minimum that I could actually move in is for a 3 million, and then guess what? My down payment is freaking 300 to 400,000 at least, and that's a
It's
lot of money for
10%.
me. Yeah, no,
Why is it
10 percentage
10%?
is 10 percentage. I think some of the banks they want a security deposit because I'm still a PR. I'm not a citizen yet, so there is not the same percentage for, and it goes to 20 percentage for someone who is new to the country,
Oh, wow.
and
Okay.
it's common across all the banks. It's not just few banks,
No.
private banks and also national banks. So yeah,
To be
but
honest, when I got my first house was I was
yeah,
31 or 30. I think just when I turned 30, I got my first house in Denmark.
okay,
But to be honest, I could have gotten my first house when I was on SU.
mm,
Uh,
okay,
SU was large enough for me, and the money I was making on the side from part-time work, it was large enough for me to get a 1 million house. And there's plenty of 1 million houses in the north of Denmark. By the way, if anyone wants to move, leave Copenhagen, leave the south to them, come to the north. We have a lot of turnkey houses at 1 million, and that's with a lot of space around. You don't
uh,
have to sit in a cubicle in Copenhagen for 5 million kronas. you know,
but
there
is
is
it the
like,
same price across the city center or close to the city, or is it even
okay,
further in
if you
rural
want to live
areas?
literally in the city center, is 2 million. Okay,
That's not a big deal. Yeah, that's a good money actually. Yeah, yeah. I'm living 20 kilometers outside the greater Copenhagen, but the prices are like skyrocketing, and I
yeah,
can't
and I
imagine to
expect that
actually.
everyone wants to live there. I mean, when you guys all want to live on such a small space and such a
Mm,
small island, what do you think is going to happen?
yeah,
It's which is sad because you don't really pay the real price of the house. You pay a
mm,
very inflated price actually,
true,
uh,
true.
and that can easily deflate. You know how it can deflate. Basically, what one thing that they're planning to do now in the housing reform is that
Mm,
they want to get the state to start building again housing for people. So that means they
mm,
will attack the private rental market and the private ownership market. Because what happened now is that, for example, if you look at the city center of Copenhagen, 65% of the apartments there are not owned by people for themselves. They're owned by
mm,
companies or by people who rent them out.
mm,
This whole idea of you buying apartments to rent them out has become so strong that it has pushed the price artificially up.
mm,
Uh, but now the government is planning to start building.
mm,
Uh, they will start building and provide people with cheaper housing, and it's not just in Denmark. Actually, even EU is planning to put a huge focus on housing because housing is a European problem. We do not have enough
mm,
housing
mm,
out there, and the fact that you can't afford, if the fact that there are people who in their 30s can't afford a house is
mm,
ridiculous.
mm.
Uh, this idea that
It's
you
not.
have to live in rental all your life, it's not management. It's not the European way
Yeah.
of life. As you see, only 30 years ago, we most of us owned a house as soon as
Mm,
25 years old.
mm.
What happened to that? You
No.
know? Yeah. Well, fair enough. In Denmark, you can still own a house pretty early if you're smart about where you choose to take it from, because somehow the it's a low down payment. It's a very low interest rate. Now it's not so low anymore, but
Now it's
when
not. Yeah. Now it's
back
4 to
then was
5 percentage, I guess. Yeah.
yeah. But when I got it was 1%, right? And I locked it in
Yeah.
on 1%.
Mm.
Uh, and that was very good for us to
But
be
do you
able to
think the prices will go down? What do you speculate?
house pricings. If the government
No, no,
wanna
not the housing prices, the interest rates.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
the interest rates are on the way down. That's I
Mm.
mean, look at the inflation rate. It's nearing 0% in Denmark.
Oh.
Uh, it's incredibly low, and also, unfortunately, it's not just about Denmark. We have to follow the rest of Europe and U.S. market.
Mm.
So now
Mm.
U.S. market finally interest rate has declined quite significantly as well. So that means that the Federal Reserve will announce very soon a cut in interest rate. Then
Mm.
European Central Bank will announce a cut in interest rates, and then finally
Mm.
the Danish Treasury will also announce a cut in interest rate, and then our banks will slowly
Mm.
also announce a cut in interest rates.
That is
So
what
that's
I'm
kind of
looking forward to.
okay. You have some mortgage loan or some loan that you got.
No, I'm looking for to buy an apartment. So probably I'll wait when the law is passed, and then probably I will bet in, because I've stayed in Denmark for close to 6 years now. In 4 months, I will be 6 years in Denmark, and I'm thinking of actually investing in property. Before I talked about cars, I think property is better, and I can put some money aside in the meantime to have the down payment like 10 percentage at least. So I think it's a good sign for me to start saving more money. Yeah, let's talk about university.
Okay.
Bachelor programs places will be cut in 2025 around 15 percentage, and
Mhm.
most of the affected universities are Roskilde, CBS, ITU, and Aarhus. Let's talk about it.
Well, the government wants fewer people to study higher education that lead to unemployment. That's that's
Okay.
the easy question. Simply, they want more people to think and consider a vocational direction. We
Okay.
have too few people who want to be carpenters, electricians,
Mm,
useful things, and too many people who want to be anthropologists, Africa studies,
mm,
I don't know, art and other unemployment studies that are out there. No offense to people who study. I also studied in unemployment studies, international relations.
mm,
Most of my colleagues took years before they found and landed their first job. So there are many such, let's just say, profiles in university which are simply not connected with the reality of the job market.
mm,
And then the government said, okay, this is not okay. We first of all, we need more people to study vocational direction.
mm,
Second of all, they also making the master degrees shorter. 10% of the master degrees will be shorter
mm.
from 2 years to one, because they want
Okay.
people to join the labor market faster.
Mm,
That's because of the shortage of labor. That was the idea behind it. But I also want people, after they finish a shorter education, let's say, to
mm,
quicker join the labor market, because
mm,
people who tend to study in university, they tend to study as long as they can,
mm,
5, 6, 7, 8 years before they land their first job, and that's a long, long time to start your contributing to the state.
mm,
You know, so that there's some considerations behind. I understand why they do it. They're also planning to move some spots from the big cities to the rural areas. So
mm,
there will be a lot of, let's just say, programs that will be moved in the rural. For example, lawyers will be studying in Kogi, if I'm not wrong. They will not be studying in Copenhagen anymore. I think maritime studies are all moved to the north of Denmark.
mm,
Uh, there is several professions that will be clustered together in
mm,
a certain city that's not unknown, more or less, in Denmark. because they want to bring people to other areas. They don't want everyone to because all the students come to the big cities. They can't afford to live in the big cities, most more or less. They spend most of their money on rent, if not more, and then that leads to a very precarious life. And SU technically was thought that you should have a decent life, be able to actually focus on your studies, and live, thrive on it. But not in Copenhagen, right? Not in
Yeah,
our.
no way.
Uh, so that's kind of the reasoning behind. They want a bit more equality between the big cities areas and the rural areas,
Mm.
and they need more students to be spread a little bit all the time.
Diversify with the
Exactly.
program across across cities and rural areas.
Yeah. So
Makes
it's
sense.
many people. Well, to be honest, at the same time, for example, Dansk industry is very angry about this cut in students because they say that we need more qualified workforce in Denmark, and what are we doing? We are cutting down on study places. So there is logic and there's not logic to it. The problem is they cannot motivate people to move to the rural areas if they
Mm.
don't cut down on how many available spots are in the city, in the big cities, right?
Mm.
So that's the problem here, because the spots are cut from the current universities which are in the big cities, not from the
Mm.
rural. But there are new spots open in the rural areas. So
Mm.
people will just have to choose to study there instead of Copenhagen, Aarhus, and Aalborg, right?
But are these programs just Danish based programs, or is it also
Yes.
English? So it's only
We
Danish programs.
exactly. They want to cut the general number of spots in a university,
Mm.
not a specific type.
L-
But at the same
Mm.
time, they're opening new spots for English speakers, which they cut a couple of years ago. So
Okay.
there will be bachelor programs. There will be more places in master degrees, and
Mm.
also I think some university colleges are getting their places back as well.
Mm.
Especially if you choose to study in Horsens or Colding,
Mm.
there will definitely be a lot of new spots for English speakers down there.
But how will talking about how will the master's program, being normally 2 years, including the thesis period, working with the companies and doing the thesis, master thesis, cutting down to 1 year, does it make a value for students, because they might have electives for 2 semesters in the academic year, and then they have to do some project with the organizations or maybe do research about something. um, I don't know how this dynamics will work. In my opinion, 1 year is a really sandwich model, like a short version of a huge massive program. So maybe there could be some electives that they could omit and focus on a particular set of electives for the job market. Maybe I'm not sure.
I think you have to think about the master degree. You have nice to know and need to know, right?
Yeah,
Basically,
that
they'll
is
cut
also
down
true.
on all the nice to know. Simply,
Mm,
they'll
mm,
go savage on all the stuff that. Do you really need to know that to be that?
mm, mm,
Not really. They will also be more savage in the amount of time they give you to write your thesis. Um,
mm,
so there will be more strict and more efficient models putting it into it. We don't know how this is going to work, to be honest.
mm,
Universities say that it's not going to work.
mm,
Ministry of Education, higher education wants it to work. So
mm,
so let's see what's going to happen in reality. It's never been tested yet. We're gonna see the first, I think, group entering the master degree in 2025. So in 2026 we can have again this discussion and see, okay, what's the idea with this 1 year master degrees? Is it working,
mm,
or is it a complete failure? Because right now they're
mm,
also testing. They only choose 10% of the master degrees which can be shortened.
mm,
Uh, so maybe there'll be more technical ones, or
mm,
I don't know which ones, or maybe the ones that they want people to go faster into the labor market, like IT or
mm,
cybersecurity, or who knows.
mm,
Uh, so that's kind of like the reasoning behind it. I'm not defending the government here. I'm just
mm,
saying what's their logic behind it. Does it work? Does it not work? I don't know. I know that in Denmark we're desperate for labor force.
mm.
That's
That
what
is
I know.
true. That's
Simply
always
not.
the case, right? Yeah.
No, no. I mean, we're growing. Us, because we have a strong economy, because
Mm,
despite all the crises that hit us in the past couple of years,
mm,
we're still growing like crazy. We have broken the record of employed people in Denmark historically. We are
Mm.
more than 3 million people who work right now, who have a job
Mm.
in Denmark. This
That's
never
like
happened.
half of the population.
More than half.
More than half of, yeah, 6 million right
That's
now. It's
that's a lot of people who are actually employed, because
mm.
you have to also consider that in those numbers they don't consider people who have companies and
Mm.
work for themselves. That's 100,000 people. So that's why the numbers are much higher in reality. But that's 3 million people who work for someone else, right? That's a lot of people who have a job in Denmark.
Yeah.
And because of that, we also have a lot of money coming to the government, because there's a lot of
Mm.
taxes being collected. So we have this huge leeway to be able to come up with all sorts of crazy improvements in the next years. That's why if you look, you'll notice that the government comes up with new ideas and new reforms and new
Mm.
things to spend money on almost every week or 2 weeks at best. There's always something new. Like right now, they want to give 200 million kronas reward for municipalities who are willing to make a lot of solar cell parks and wind farms around their municipalities. So it's a bonus basically for rural areas to be like, yes, we have a lot of land which is empty, we can win those money. But right, 200 million right here. Or now they want to give this with the rural reform. They want to allow. They want to give this extra payment for young people
Mm.
who live in 25 municipalities where they have to do a lot of transport between school and where they stay, school and maybe work. I don't know. And they want to make a subsidy for public transport for them. Right? Again,
Mm.
money that have to come from somewhere. Or the
Mm.
fact that they were willing last time. Remember, we talked about retirement. The
Yeah.
fact that they were willing to freeze the retirement age at 70, which also might mean a cost of 30 billion for the
Yeah.
society every year. Uh, Nobody will have touched that
Mm.
before in the last couple of years, because they will be crushed just thinking about 30 billion. But then when they saw that Denmark can grow and can have this extra money in the budget
Mm.
that they were not expecting, now they have different ambitions, and everyone comes up with crazy ideas. Like now the conservatives, they want families who keep their children at home to take care of them before in the first years of life, like up to 5 years old. Because in some municipalities in Denmark, 81 municipalities or so, if you choose to not take your child to daycare or to kindergarten, you can get paid by the government to take care of the child at home. But the way it works is that you're not allowed to have a job next to it, or a part-time job, or any other sort of
Mm.
income. But now the conservatives are like, why don't we allow those parents to also get a part-time job, 20,000 kronas maximum, and still give them the money?
Mm. Talking about the population, I think it's also interesting to look at the low fertility rate in Denmark and the rest of Europe, and what does
Yeah.
it mean for the next 6 decades? Uh, I think it's written about there's a decline to 3 million by 2080. What is alarming in this? I know there will be a lot of uh, immigrants moving into Denmark, but what does this low fertility in Denmark mean for Danish immigrants or internationals living?
I mean, it just means that the look here, we as internationals, we most of us are young. Most of us come
Mm.
here, start a family. Many we kind of keep the country running. The discussion
Mm.
here is more about how many Danes will there be actually, because they don't want to talk too on the face about it, but like
Mm.
how many actual Danes will there still be 60 years from now? Because the
Mm.
population of Denmark in reality will not decrease to 3 million. There's no way. You have to understand, there's 200,000 internationals coming up. I think they came last year. 200,000. A record.
200,000 just last year. Okay.
It was a record. It never
Wow.
happened before. We jumped to 600,000 in Denmark, and they
Mm.
expect that we will be in the next 4 years. We should reach 1 million. So 400,000 more internationals should come here.
Mm.
So if this rate of, I mean, and you also have to take into other things, right? Think about
Mm.
it. there will be huge waves of climate refugees in the future.
Mm,
There will still be people coming to Denmark just because of the country. There will be people running away from Southern Europe as the
mm,
heat gets worse down there and
mm.
moving up to the north. So the question here is, will Denmark have enough people 6 years from now? Yes. The other question is, how many of them will be Danish?
Yeah. And currently, how many percentage of Danish people live in Denmark? Of course, it should be
Well, it's
70, 80
more roughly
percentage.
5 million, 5 million of them.
5 million. That's like the largest majority, right? So 1 million is immigrants and 5 million is
No, 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 no.
ethnicans.
But we're not 6 million yet.
We're
We're not.
5.9, right?
If yeah, at best, I think. And,
Yeah.
for sure, we're not yet at six, but we're
Mm.
somewhere between 5.6 and probably 5.9. Yeah,
No,
because
I
we
think
are
it's not 5.6 for sure. 5.8 when I saw last year. So
okay.
it should be
No,
more than that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so it should
Pretty
be
sure.
five because we are 600,000, but that was last year data. So by now,
Mm.
probably we're much more.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
That is also
and
true. I
then
mean, with the recent immigration from Ukraine, asylum seeking immigrations, I think there's a lot of immigrants in the country.
the, the numbers
Yeah.
might be much higher. But the
Yeah,
point
yeah.
is, there
It
are
is higher.
5.2 million Danes in Denmark, and
Yeah.
by 2080 there will be like 2 million.
And some of the population are already old. So there will be a historical elderly population, Danish elderly population.
Yeah,
And
we will
then,
live in the
yeah.
elderly lands. That will be Europe in the future.
Mm,
Welcome to the elderly lands, where on the street you will see more elderly than young people. Seeing a young
mm,
person or a child will be a rarity, an event
mm, mm,
in the future. Again, this kind of doom scenarios is based on the fact that maybe Europe will not allow any more people to come into it. Imagine
mm,
that right wingers come in power in Europe. They build the wall around Europe and be like, okay, this is us. We have to deal with whatever comes between ourselves. We are 500 million people. Let's see what we can do about it. If that happens, then we will shrink to half. We will be 250 million people, and it'll be like I don't know if there's a movie that can really screen this, but imagine coming to a elderly home where there's a lot of old people. Well, imagine that elderly home becoming the
mm.
whole society.
Oh my
Uh,
God. Then what about physical labor, right? It'll be lacking a lot of physical labor. How about nursing,
robots,
robots? Yeah,
robots will
but
do
you can't
everything.
replace everything. Yeah, yeah.
Well,
I mean,
either that or they have to not build those walls.
yeah, that is also true. Yeah, yeah.
Aaron, the reality will be that no matter this will never happen, because I know that we will see reason at some point,
Mm,
and they
mm,
will
mm.
allow people to come.
Yeah,
They're still allowing today, but
yeah,
even if the worst happens and the walls happen, those walls will be teared down at some point because some
yeah,
other people
yeah.
will see that this situation is really going bad.
Mm.
So a lot of things will happen. All I can guarantee you, Aaron, is that our life will be very interesting. Is that a lot of crazy things will happen during our lifetime, and we will see some severe changes in society and in
Yeah.
the way the world works, and it'll be fun. We might see yeah, well, some of it will not be fun because we're also international, so we might end up in some camps here and there, but let's hope we don't get there. It's
uh,
too soon, right?
I hope not.
Well, if more internationals in Denmark are getting involved in as many political parties as possible and are there present where the decision making is happening,
Mm,
then we can prevent such situations, at least
mm.
here in Denmark. So if
One
you're
way it's good.
having some free time at home and you want to do something useful, go sign up for a party. You don't have to be a citizen. You don't even have to
Okay.
speak Danish, to be honest. You just have to
So
want to
internationals
join.
can be a party, can start a party in Denmark.
Yeah, of course. Start
Oh.
party, be a party member, whatever. I suggest, to be honest, to be a party member. It's easier to, in Denmark, parties are very like a tradition thing. There's very few parties
Mm,
that are old, very old, 100 years old, and there's a
mm,
few which are very new, but they're not doing super well. And usually the new ones they go away very fast, while the traditional ones are very well put in there in place, right? There's people who voted the same party because their grandparents were voting the same party. You have to understand this is a traditional thing. There are people who
That's
do
the
their
same in
weddings
India.
same, because you're social democrats, you do the wedding in a certain way. If you're liberals, you do the wedding in another way. That's how
Mm.
deep is the choices, the political choices in Denmark. So that's
Mm.
why I always suggest join an existing party, especially traditional
Mm.
old party, and become part of that community, and you'll see a different Denmark. Simply, all those questions, the quest of finding a friend. There is your friend. He's waiting for you.
Narcis, I think we have covered a lot of topics today. Uh,
Mhm.
the one thing that I really excites me in being part of this podcast is I'm getting educated while we have this conversation from your know-how and also your experiences. And I think it has been a pleasure so far. This is the second episode we have had, and I hope we have more of these in the coming future. Do you have any final comments or thoughts before we wind up this podcast for today?
I think we should let people know that these first two episodes were a trial run. We wanted to see how it works, how it feels, and then we will properly start in 3 weeks, right, Aaron? I think 3 weeks from now.
Yes,
So we will properly
exactly.
start in 3 weeks from now. I will have an amazing microphone that I'm not using right now, so the quality of audio will definitely increase. Maybe we will
And
have more structure.
Narcissus will probably make a song for us and then sing.
Let's see on that. Yeah, put a pin on it. Maybe we can expand on the format, invite some people over to join us in these
Mm.
conversations, and tell us what works for you. Like, should we have a more easygoing conversation, or do you think that we should be more straight on the point, so that you can
Yeah,
learn as much as possible from this
yeah,
thing? But of course, it will also have to fit with the way it works for us.
yeah.
So that was it from me. I had fun for this first two sessions. I'm used to audio, and well, I'm actually used to video as well. I have done plenty of live streams
I
before.
think
So
both are good because videos are really good when powerful when you communicate in different platform, for example, Instagram or LinkedIn, for example. And I think these audio podcasts, I think you have a solid base who listens to a podcast in Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I think
mhm.
what we're doing right now is really cool. In my opinion, I think both formats complement each other. With the new Spotify, we have a chance to see and listen the same time. So you can actually switch between two modes. It's new Spotify features. So it's a video podcast that
Is
we're
someone
doing right
coming
now.
up? When is that coming up?
It's already there.
So we
We
could
all
actually upload this when we come back in 3 weeks, also on
no,
Spotify.
it's already live. The first episode is updated in a video format, so people could actually stream and see video plus audio. So they can actually lock their phone while driving and listen to the podcast, and then they can actually see when they have the time. So it's a
Our
two-way.
our
Yeah,
podcast as well.
yeah. It's already
Okay,
live.
cool.
So for the audio, for the people who are listening, you now have a chance to also see and experience video podcasts in
And
with Last Week
if
in Denmark.
if there's something you want to see different, if you want us to do anything different, then let us
Yeah,
know. See
yeah,
what if it's possible to add anything to this.
yeah,
But otherwise, it's imagine, I don't know. We could expand on having like this Saturday drinks with us, right? Have a glass of wine. Let's sit around and let's talk about life in Denmark. If you guys want us to invite more people, say so,
yeah,
and then we can definitely make it happen. So, or
yeah.
should we? Does this can we allow people to just enter the call while they are listening? But this is not live. Sorry.
This is
Yeah.
not live, but we can actually invite with links, so we can add one more person to the conversation. Yes, yeah.
No.
And then we are already in two different zones in Denmark. So you're from Aalborg, and I'm living in Copenhagen, right, Gentofte. But then we can always add people to the conversation
Yeah,
and
we should also think
talk
about the
about.
gender balance, right? We should
Yeah,
allow the I mean, we have to consider also the other half of the population.
yeah.
Uh,
The equality is fine, but as long as we have something interesting to talk about, I think it shouldn't be a problem, right? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, of course.
yeah,
Well,
cool.
otherwise, thank you so much for today, and looking forward to see all of you in
Yeah.
3 weeks from now.